working drummer.
Now kick it.
This is the Working Drummer Podcast, serving up perspectives, experiences, and stories from ground-level working pros. Advice, tips, and secrets on how to build a career in the music business.
Hey, this is Matthew Krause, and you are listening to the podcast Working Drummer. Today is my interview with drummer Reggie Jackson. Based in Columbus, Ohio, Reggie built a reputation from an early age as a powerful drummer who could cover many, many styles. Over the last 2 decades, Reggie expanded his reach beyond the Columbus scene through worldwide tours with Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee Dr. John, as well as Grammy Award winner Diane Schuur. Reggie continues to stay busy in Columbus, working with many great players like Bobby Floyd and DeCenzo in a wide variety of playing scenarios. To find out more about this podcast and see other podcasts that we've done, go to workingdrummer.net. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can find us on iTunes where you can subscribe to our podcast. And if you will, please leave a comment or a rating on our iTunes account. It really helps us grow. So let's get to it. Here is Reggie Jackson.
It's not only just a constant struggle, at least for me. It's not just a constant struggle, but it's a struggle to stay encouraged and excited. Not so much about playing, because I think any drummer that loves to play, you love to play.
Yeah.
It's, can I stay excited to play even though I'm working with an artist who doesn't give a rat's butt about the artistry or the music itself? For them, it's an ego trip. It's a way for them to live out some diva, whatever, or can I, stay motivated to continue to play and to practice when, I'm playing these festivals, and even though I'm hearing some really incredible drummers with some bands that nobody knows who they are, and then maybe I see somebody who's not necessarily, where they should be in comparison to the rest of the guys in the band, and so, and I don't, not that I'm trying to judge anybody, but I guess if I'm truthful about, I think what we all at some point think about, it can be frustrating, but then at the same time, once you've done it for a while, you understand how this business really works.
Right.
And then the shift then becomes, because it is what it is, there are going to be guys who get gigs who maybe, not that any of us are deserving of anything.
Mm-hmm.
But when, somebody's skill set maybe doesn't line up with the position that they're in.
Or the level of success, you think?
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. But yet, they have that level of success or that position, we still, but yet I'm doing X, Y, and Z, that can be frustrating. But I know for me, what has helped me has been, God bless them. I know what they're going to have to deal with. And, I guess my point is it's been more about me focusing on me and not anybody else's situation. It's been about, okay, let me go back to what I really enjoy, which is, me trying to get as good as I possibly can.
Right.
And as long as I focus on that, the gigs, the opportunities, that stuff will come.
Yeah.
And I guess my point is it's a hard thing in this business to stay focused on that. because the pressures of life, when you have to pay your rent or, your car payment, your insurance, or, if you have kids, their clothes, food, their after school activities, whatever it is, like all of a sudden it's, man, I need a better paying gig. And then there's that focus of, you don't worry about you anymore or your craft. It's all of a sudden, how do I get the more lucrative gig? And then all of a sudden it takes you down this road of, you start doing that. Well, how did they get that gig? Well, why do they have that gig? And, and it comes from an honest place, because you're just trying to provide for you and your family. But,
somebody hurt you, Reggie. Tell me, man. Who hurt you?
Right.
What's his name, man? I'll get him.
Right. No. I guess it's more about when you practice and you have goals that you want to set, or really you just want to make a living. But then I think there are times when you're so focused on that you see a gig that you want that's very lucrative, and not even the artistic things out the window, because again it's really about you're trying to make money playing drums.
Right.
But then when you see someone who maybe has a gig that you feel like you should have or something like that, and then you see guys that maybe aren't as strong of a player that has those gigs, then, again, you start judging.
Yeah.
But I think that's just because you're trying to get to where they are, because you feel the stress of, man, I got bills to pay. I need money.
It's funny because there's so many situations, there's so many factors that attribute to people having the work that they do. And I don't know if this ties into what you're talking about. When I first met you and first heard you play, we worked together at Columbus Pro Percussion, and we're in our 20s, and you were at Ohio State, I was at Capitol, and, it's like to see you play, to hear people talk about you, and then to finally hear you play, it's like, man, this guy is incredible. He is such a great player, such a strong player, such facility and knowledge. And so at a young age, you were a powerhouse in Columbus, and people knew that. So here you have worked so hard at your craft, and then how do you, at this stage of your life, continue to grow as a player? Because I watched, one of the people you played with was Dr. John. And I was watching a video the other day of you doing solo with Dr. John, and doing the whole that style that he plays, you soloing around that, and just kind of hearing this kind of different player than I was used to hearing. But how do you stay motivated? How do you continue to grow as a player?
Yeah, I think for me, well, one, let me say, it's funny to hear you say that, because I never thought, as far as, people talking about me or whatever when we were younger, I never, like, I never even heard that, thought about that. It didn't seem that way to me at all. I just, I just saw myself, just like you. I mean, we both, you were a great player as well. And, you were playing your, but it's so funny because I still have it up in my bedroom. I don't know if you even remember, but you wrote out Steve Gadd, Mozambique pattern from the Oh,
50 Ways? No, Late in the Evening?
No, not 50 Ways, but Late in the Evening, yeah.
Yeah.
And you were like killing that. And that is just like, okay, I love that groove. And like, what was it, probably 6 or 7 months ago, I pulled that out and started working on it. But I mean, that was, I mean, you were a great player as well. So I never looked at it that way. I just looked at it, we're all trying to do the same thing. And, the brother, I guess it's just a brotherhood of drummers, like, let's just help each other out,
right,
kind of a thing.
That's always been a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as, now, I guess it's similar to, a while ago, I used to be really frustrated, and then just really just focused on, how can I get better?
Yeah.
Regardless of, everything else, how can I get better? And for me, I guess it's always been that for me.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I guess I've always just focused on, okay, man, I've got issues here. It's just been that constant, let me try and get better, with my time,
yeah,
with my feels, playing stylistically correct. But at the same time, where can I implement my own sound? And what is my own sound? What is my artistry?
Mm-hmm.
For me, trying to stay focused on that, and as much as possible, not get pulled in other directions, whether it be worrying about, why does this person have this gig and I don't, or, oh crap, just got into it with my wife, or, oh man, there's this thing going down with my mom's side of the family, all these other things that can easily pull me away. Not saying that, you don't deal with those,
right.
But just making sure that I just stay focused on, me improving myself, has really helped. Because the funny thing is, to me, music and life pretty much they're parallels. So
yeah, what do you mean?
Go ahead.
What do you mean by that?
Well, a lot of the lessons that you learn when you're trying to improve yourself as a musician and as a drummer, my gosh, for me, they're a direct parallel to life. So, like, for example, and I'll when I teach the few students that I have, I kind of relate the position of the drummer similar to any relationship position that you might be in. So, for example, as a drummer, whether you're playing with, say you're playing in a band, you got 4 or 5 people in the band, you are kind of like a relationship counselor in that, these 4 or 5 other people walk into the room and you have to listen to what they all do in terms of, what our job is, which is about playing a groove, about time. Each one of those individuals is going to have their own interpretation of time, just like, family count, if the family's dealing with an issue, they all have their own perception of that, whatever issue. In our case, it's time. So we have to listen to everybody's perception. And then we have to put the time at a place where that whole group or that whole family can now groove together.
Yeah.
Or as a counselor, you have to, you hear all their issues. Okay, here's how you solve your issues as a family.
Yeah.
And for me, it's the same thing. Even if you're, let's say you're playing in a duo, it's like you and a guitar player.
Right.
It's just the two of you.
Yeah.
Well, that guitar player has a perception of time. Now, let's say that guitar player rushes. And let's say, you have just rock solid time. Not saying that you're perfect, but you work with a metronome on a daily basis.
Right,
so
right. Your time
sense
is
of time
better. Your time is better than this player's time.
Right.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is their truth is how they feel the time.
Right.
So you have to deal with them on their truth. You have to deal with them on where they feel the time. So then if they're feeling it on the front side, they're rushing, well then, it's just like a relationship.
Yeah.
Does it really matter who's right?
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
Do you have to say who's right? Or can you just say, okay, let me just put it where it needs to go for this thing to work? Just like in a relationship,
Yes.
Do I need to tell my significant other that they're wrong? Or can I be, confident enough to just say, okay, is it really worth the fight?
Right.
and on a gig, it's not really worth it. It's not. You don't need to. It's not worth the fight.
Right.
Now, if you're in a studio situation, and whoever is spending whatever $25, $50, $100 an hour on this session, and all of a sudden that guitar player is saying, "Well, you're rushing," to you as the drummer, well, then that's a fight I think you need to have, just because at the end of the day, money is being spent based on time. And if you know where the issue is, which is his time, then you gotta deal with it, because then the producer or whoever's in charge, all they're going to appreciate is the fact that you can resolve the issue as quickly as possible.
Right. Now, I have a question.
So then it's,
I have a question for you, though. What if the guitar player, the one who's rushing, is the one that hired you for his session, and he's the one that's cutting you the check? You know what I'm saying? Whether it's for the gig or for the session. And that I know you're talking about being a counselor or a mediator of sorts. And that's all, I mean, it's very true. I see the parallels are, very real. But one of the things that sometimes when you're dealing with trying to mediate time and bring people together, is sometimes it's their picture on the poster, or they're the one that's cutting you the check.
Like in that scenario or analogy where, you got a guitar player who's Russian.
Yeah.
And, $100 an hour is being spent. It's only a fight if he is saying that you are the issue, you the drummer. So if that guy you were working with, if it was a scenario where, he's saying, well, you're not playing in time and it's not working. Well, in that situation, I think that's a fight you need to have, because the only way you can really resolve that, because if you're playing in time and he's playing out of time, and that's the issue that's holding things moving forward, because then what do you do? Because even if let's say prior to this, you're following him, and he's saying that there's a time issue,
right?
Because you're playing the gig. Well, then it's okay. It won't be resolved, so you have to do something to resolve it so that you can move forward. And then that's when I would say, okay, well, let's pull up a click track, and then we'll be good. And then that way, you can establish the issue or resolve the issue. Now, let's say you track it once with the click track, and he says, well, you're out of time. And then you can say, okay, well, let's solo the drum track with the click, and then guitar with, and then expose the issue. And then if the guy at that point, if he says, okay, well, I don't want to use a click track. Well, then at that point, it's clear that you're not the issue. You've shown that you're not, and essentially he's saying, well, he's not paying. Well, unless he is, even if he's the guy paying for it. At that point, the issue is resolved.
Yeah.
At that point, he's saying, just follow me. And at that point, I think you just do whatever you got to do to get through the session.
Right. It's tough because you have to kind of cherry pick your battles, because there's times when you're right. You know that you understand the rhythm, you understand the tempo, the feel, and it's like, do I pick an argument with maybe, even if, say it's not a band leader, maybe it's not the artist, maybe it's not the person that's cutting you the check.
Right.
Maybe there's some wiggle room to kind of like have that debate and get it resolved. And especially if you understand the person's personality, if it's worth doing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that weighs into it a lot as well. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where, if I have this guy play with a click track, is he a strong enough musician that he's going to recognize the point that I'm making?
Yeah.
But if he isn't, it's not even worth the battle to me.
Right.
At that point, it's just about doing the gig. You know what I mean? It's almost like you kind of have to. Oh, well, yeah, it's just like you're saying. You have to cherry pick your battles, in that is this a battle that I can win, or is this going to be a battle that's
right? Or is this going to move the whole project forward? Not necessarily about winning or losing.
Not just
but,
about
we all going to
winning,
win from this. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I was going through the jazz catalog, and I come across Diane Schuur live at Ronnie Scott's. I was like, oh, yeah. Diane Schuur, yeah. So I open it up, and I look inside it, and man, there you are. I was like, oh, this is awesome. So it's like less than a year ago, maybe even just 6 months ago, I got that CD, and man, that was so awesome to hear you on this, and what a legendary club.
Yeah.
How did that gig come about, working with her, and maybe what was that gig like that night or that week at Ronnie Scott's?
I still do some dates with her. Like, now she does a lot of, she picks up musicians in areas, but when she can, she'll hire a guy. So like, I know for a while she was using a bunch of drummers, like myself, Ulysses. Oh, what's his last name? He's endorsed in Tama Drums now. He's actually a great player. Okay. And Willie Jones the third. And I mean, she'd been using a bunch of different drummers. But prior, when I did that date, that was when I was working with her pretty much like full time. She had a band that she was consistently working with. Okay. And then how I got the gig, I actually did a local gig in Columbus with her musical director at that time, who was Roger Hines. And
bass player in Columbus.
Yeah. And I had just moved back from LA, and basically on the gig, had mentioned, hey, if Diane's ever looking for somebody, let me know. And he was just like, well, actually, funny you should ask. She just fired her East Coast drummer, and she's looking for a new East Coast drummer, put an audition tape together for me, and I'll send it to her. Mm-hmm. So I, went back and put together a cassette tape.
Oh, really?
So, maybe I shouldn't even say that because I'm giving away my age. But a cassette tape of like some recordings that I had of myself from like my college recital and some session stuff from some gigs from with different people.
Yeah.
And she heard that and liked my playing and got the gig, and then started working with her. And then that session came up. She was, I think she might have changed record companies or something, or management companies, and they had the idea of her doing a live record. And it kind of came together really fast. Like, I think maybe they had even decided to do that because we were already on tour in Europe. Maybe for, back then we would go on tour anywhere between, 18 to 27 days in Europe.
Wow.
Straight.
Yeah.
And I think that decision happened while we were already over there. But, the guys at Ronnie Scott's were, super great. And actually what was funny was right before that session, we recorded that. I was talking to the sound guy because Beck had just been there with, I think that was, I played Ronnie Scott's a bunch of times with Diane, but yeah. I can't remember for sure, but for some reason I'm thinking that this was when I asked because, we were going to record, but Beck was there, and I remember asking him about that DVD recording with Beck and, and Vinny and Tal, yeah. Because, I'm a huge Vinny fan. And I was curious because I had just seen some clips of that concert. And I mean, Vinny's like just slamming.
Mm-hmm.
And Ronnie Scott's is a really small club.
Yeah,
It is not a big club at all. And so, because even when, every time I play there, I'm holding back. Now, mind you, I'm playing with a jazz singer who's singing and playing acoustic piano. And Vinny's playing with, Beck, with, tons of guitar amps, so it's a totally different situation.
But still,
I was just so curious. And the sound guy he was just like, oh man, Vinny just was slamming. And I was just like floored. Like it just made me wish I had actually been there, the week before, or that we were, had gotten in, or played those dates like right after them, so that I could have seen Vinny with Beck. Because, the video wise, it was just amazing. So it would have been great to actually been there to feel it.
But still, that had to have been kind of an honor and just to feel the vibe that was in that place, because so many people had. I mean, God, Buddy Rich used to play there. Many great jazz players and bands have gone through there that I'm sure alone, but then one of your heroes was there just, maybe the week before.
Right.
And what an honor to know that you were playing in the same spot and doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always, Ronnie Scott, I used to play the Blue Note every year for almost 10 years with Diane.
That's awesome.
I mean, all those venues, I totally felt one, I just felt incredibly blessed because I certainly didn't feel like yeah, I should be there. Considering, Vinny Colaiuta was just here, or, at the Blue Note, Roy Haynes had just played, or, whoever it was. It certainly, who am I, some guy from Columbus, Ohio, what, am I doing here? But, felt incredibly blessed and honored
now, there you go.
to have the opportunity.
Right, and there you go. Like, all the way back to some of the original things that we were talking about is you're seeing guys, you're like, how did he get that gig? Well, here you are, man. You're that guy. You're that guy doing that great gig, playing a week after one of your heroes, or playing at a legendary venue that so many people have played, that we all look up to. And there's going to be people there that are going to be amazed and love what you do. I want to jump real quick to something I read. It was a blogger or an article. I didn't really quite nail it down. Somebody wrote this about a Dr. John show that they saw you at in 2013. The whole deal was the drummer. This guy was beaming from the pocket from the first beat. A lot of drummers are really skilled, but don't exude their joy to the audience. It's more about them. Ziggy Modalest and this Reggie Jackson are the opposite, but it's about conveyance of joy transmissions, man. And this is what he was doing. So he was excited.
Wow.
Do you know about this? Do you know about this article?
No, that's funny. That there were early on that gig, there was a lot of I got slammed pretty hard a couple of times, but but later that had more, I believe, had more to do with how that whole gig came about. We just ended up being kind of the guilty party, so to speak. But that is wow. That's pretty.
I'm kind of getting ahead of ourselves here, talking about the Dr. John gig, but that situation here is somebody in the audience that the rest of the article talks about how many times this guy had seen Dr. John, what a hardcore fan he was, and knew so much about the band and knew so much about the different incarnations of Dr. John's band. But he took some time there to point out what you brought to the table on that gig, and not only in your playing, but your joy and the energy that you brought. But
that's interesting that guy said that, and at least it's one of those things for me. I don't even notice, just because, like all of us, I enjoy playing, and then, when you're serving the music, it's just an enjoyable thing, especially if you, are doing it with some great players. And then, for me, like the Dr. John thing, it was, every night it used to freak me out, just because, I grew up hearing his music, hearing him, and also too, I was huge. I remember watching the Muppets and, Dr. Teeth, or Dr. Tooth, knowing that, that was based off of him. And, oh gosh, I think, it was just crazy. I was just so,
it's gotta be surreal.
That was every night. It was just like, wow. Like,
well, can we talk about that gig and how that came about and what that experience was like?
Oh yeah. It was, that gig came about, his new musical director, was a friend of mine from school, And
Sarah Morrow.
Sarah, yeah. And she had gotten the gig and brought him to Columbus and said that he needed a new band, because originally that band was all Columbus cats. And so she had called some guys that she knew here in Columbus and asked if we could come and meet Mac and play for him. We all met at Bobby Floyd's house, and the band was, Bobby Floyd on organ, Kevin Turner on guitar, Dwight Bailey on bass, and myself. And so she called, and I think she had sent like some stuff for us, to check out. I think it was like his new record, which actually won a Grammy. And so I like transcribed and learned all those tunes, and I think I even transcribed some other stuff. I mean, I think I must have, and literally we're talking about a day's time. Mm-hmm. Like, I think she called on a Thursday and we were going to meet the next day.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, I must have spent, oh gosh.
Did you sleep at all?
Just 4 or 5 hours. I did sleep, but it was not very much. just because I think from the time, because I think she sent the record, I transcribed that stuff. Then she sent a list of some tunes that he might want to do. So then I went on YouTube and spent hours just transcribing, listening to what the record version sounded like, what some live versions sounded like. And he came by Bobby's, and we basically just played a bunch of his tunes. And that was fun just because it was, I love Mac. He's like the coolest guy there probably is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just, and I mean, he's so laid back and cool, but at the same time, he knows exactly what he wants. Like, the guy is really, he's a genius. He knows what he wants. And then the other thing that's amazing about him too, he literally is music like it just is him. So, for example, I remember we had a little birthday get together for him. While that same day, he was on Top Chef, and they were airing his episode, or the episode that he was in, where he was the judge for one of their quick fire challenges. Mm-hmm. And so it was, they had to make a hot sauce. And so at the beginning of the quick fire challenge, he tells, the chefs, just make this thing, with some flavorosity. And then, they cut all these to the chefs, and they're like, what is flavorosity? And it was so funny because, the whole band, we're all like sitting there laughing because we know exactly what he means.
Yeah.
But it's, but that was after spending time with him, because he literally, he speaks poetry sometimes. Like, he'll say stuff and he'll just create words and phrases where you're like, wow. Like, I can't tell you how many times we would be hanging out on the bus or at a venue or a show, and he would say something and it's just like, dag, that's the chorus to a tune, or that's the hook to a song.
Yeah.
It was just heavy. So just that happening all the time for me, it just really just made that gig so enjoyable. But yeah, after, we played, he was just like, oh yeah, you cats are happening. Let's roll with it.
Is there one compliment that you hear about your playing from the people you work with that comes up over and over again over the years?
I've heard guys say, stuff like, man, you're really musical, or you put it right in the pocket, or being musical, or I recently heard a guy say, man, you're like, it's like a musical machine gun, which was, or you had musical chops or something like it. It was pretty funny, but I've heard that. And then about a few weeks ago, I did a gig with Diane, and she had Ron Blake from the Saturday Night Live band, saxophone player.
Yeah.
He was on the gig, and after the gig, he said something that I really appreciated. He was just like, man, you really orchestrated that gig. Thanks so much. You made it really easy to play. Mm-hmm. And it was only like his only second or third time playing her show, which I really appreciated, because I think sometimes we don't, as drummers, we don't really hear that often.
Well, what do you think let me clarify. Did he do the gig with Diane with other drummers? And then,
yeah.
Okay, so he had worked with other drummers with Diane in that situation. What did he mean by orchestrate? I mean, you weren't there. You weren't being band leader, passing out charts and saying, "Here, guys, here's the arrangement." But you, as the drummer, maybe, and the makeup of this, just so people understand, it's Diane singing and playing piano, drums, bass, and
bass. Yep. And yeah. Okay. Yeah, she's singing and playing piano as bass player, and saxophone player and drummer. And Ron also said, man, you know her really well. And pretty much what he was saying was, I wasn't musical director. Actually on that gig, she was using a bass player she had never worked with before. And this was only my second gig playing this music, music on this new record that she has. Okay. The previous gig I had done with Ben Wolf. The recording I was given, she was doing things different. And so I had made, notes, and then, plus there's just things that I know about her have working with her for so many years. Right. She's blind. So, with her, she really appreciates, you being sensitive to her. So, just catching slight retards that she might do, or hand gestures, or all those little kind of subtle things, I was just, kind of accentuating in the music so that the other guys who hadn't played the music either at all with her, like the bass player, or only a few times like Ron, just so that they would know, okay, there's a retard here, or okay, there's a break here that's not in the chart, or, whatever. So it was me kind of musically outlining that stuff, giving a heads up to that stuff. Yeah. He really appreciated it, and it was just nice that he even noticed it. And I see this a lot with younger players, and I mean, I can recognize it. It was myself as well. But I mean, I think and you only get this with experience and age and spending more time on this earth. Exactly. To understand, there's a drum part is deeper than just the pattern. Yeah. And then understanding that, even though you, myself, Steve Ferroni, Dennis Chambers, we could all sit down, play 8 notes on the hi-hat, 2 and 4 on the snare, 1 and 3 on the bass drum, and we're each going to play it completely different. Right. We're still playing the same pattern, but it's going to be completely different. so great about that is that, you know, we can do that. You know, that's what's great about music. But then at the same time, we're all trying to serve the bigger picture, which is the music. You know, like to me, it's you know, like the situation with Diane, with Ron and Francisco, who's the bass player. To me, it goes back to appreciating those people spending the money to come see the show. I can be blazing on the drums, but if Diane doesn't sound good, or if the group as a whole isn't good, nobody's going to remember my solo. They might remember the solo. They're just going to probably think more about, it wasn't that great of a show.
Right.
Whereas I would much rather them remember, man, that was a great show. Oh man, and the drummer played great. He played a great solo. But even if they don't say, oh, he played a great solo, the fact that, man, that was a great show I went to when I went to go see Diane Schuur. Or, man, that was a great show I went to see when I went to go see Dr. John.
Yeah.
Or, man, it was a great show when I went to this club, hole-in-the-wall spot in Columbus, Ohio called Dick's Den, and saw this great group. Doesn't matter, you know, at the end of the day, as long as people have a great time, to me, that's the focus.
Yeah.
It's not on the individual, you know, unless it's an individual artist. And again, I'm there to support that artist, you know.
Exactly.
This music business is constantly changing. So, you know, where it is now, even 2 years from now, it's certainly not going to be in the same place. So, you know, I think at the end of the day, you know, going back to, you know, just trying to just exude joy. Joy when you're playing, then you have to have joy. You have to be happy. And again, you know, like we were talking earlier about, you know, picking and choosing your fights, so to speak, in working situations, it's kind of the same thing. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about you being happy and you being able to live with whatever decisions you make. And only you can do that. And there's nothing wrong with any choices you decide for you, because it's you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And you have to be confident in that. Because it's so easy to get caught up in outside influences and wondering what someone else is thinking about you and what you do.
Right.
And with everything and with this communication era in which we live in, social media, it's very easy to get caught up in this downward spiral of feeling like we're always trying to be conscious of what other people think of us. And it's like, you have to be. And I think that piece comes from time and experience again.
Right. A friend of mine who was road manager for Dr. John when I was on the gig for a while, he's also road manager for James Taylor. And so James Taylor came to Columbus, and he called and he got me tickets. My wife, we went to the concert. And then we got a chance to meet James, and you know, Steve Gadd was in the band, and Jimmy Johnson. I mean, I got a chance to meet all of those guys and hang with them. But it just blew me away was Gadd. He played so simplistic. But at the same time, there were times though, he would play like, you know, just some really great grooves. You know, wasn't anything that, you know, you couldn't figure out. But every once in a while, he would play a lick, and it was just like, oh my gosh. what was that?
Yep.
But it was so sparse that when he would do it, it was awesome. Same thing when I played on a friend of mine, his wife and him had this gospel group, and I played some tracks on their record, and he got Dennis Chambers to play a track.
Oh, wow.
And
awesome.
Once he got it back from Dennis, he played it for me, and it was so, I literally laughed out loud because it was 4 minutes and something seconds. Gospel tune, really kind of funky groove type thing. And Dennis just played straight pocket. Like, I think he just played quarter notes on the hi-hat, 2 and 4 on the snare, and, 1 and 3, or, 1 and a 2 on the kick, or something incredibly simple.
Yeah.
He did that for the whole tune, except there was a break that led into like this little vamp section at the end of the tune. And at the break, Dennis played this insanely fast and clean roll across the toms.
Mm-hmm.
And then went straight back into the groove, and that was the only time you heard any toms anywhere on the track.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, I was in his studio, and I just fell out laughing because it was so perfect.
Yeah.
Here he is, he's just setting you up. He's just laying down a groove, and, going, things are just, you're grooving away your head, and then there's this break, and there's just this barrage of of toms. It was just so cool. It was just so great. And so, yeah, I mean, and to me, that's experience.
Right.
The more you play music, the more you realize, it's like that quote of Miles Davis, about where he says he thinks more about not about the notes he plays, but the space he leaves.
Right.
And to me, it's that. What makes a really fast lick really cool? What makes it really cool when there's a lot of space before that.
Yeah, if you would have done that every other bar, you would have by the time the sixth or seventh lick, you wouldn't have noticed it because and that James Taylor tour, Liz and I went to see, and we had front row seats on the side, so I was looking through Louis Conte and right to Gad, and I could see his side profile with his feet and everything.
Oh, cool.
And I'm such a huge James Taylor fan as well as Gad. And so there were definitely times where he was just laying it down, beautiful, beautiful, serving the song. And then every once in a while, there'd be room for him to shine. And I remember once he was going off on the end of this chorus, and I was holding Liz's hand, and I was squeezing it so hard because I was getting excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was like, ow, ow, please stop. But she got it because she knew, she knew that I was getting what he was doing, but her not being a drummer felt that energy and everybody did, because not only did he wasn't playing for the drummers in the audience, he was playing for the people.
Exactly.
Just as a drummer, I happen to appreciate that as well. And then on another plane, we get to hear that. And then I run into some drummer friends of mine at the show, and we're just like flipping out, and it's James Taylor, man. We're not talking, it's not Gad Gang. It's not Fusion. It's not, it's not Jeff Beck. It's James Taylor, but still how wonderful and beautiful it is. And, it's so great, man. So great.
Oh yeah, and the piggyback on that was the other thing that impressed me. Jimmy Johnson.
Yes.
I mean, I got hit to Jimmy listening to Alan Holdsworth.
Yeah.
And then like to see him. I mean, it was just absolutely. I mean, to me that was just like wow.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm trying to aspire to, which is just being the professional musician, just constantly serving the music.
Yep. So
if it's serving the music by playing a bunch of notes, or if it's serving the music by playing few notes, I just want to serve the music. And man, those guys just totally, they did it. Yes. And, and they do it consistently and have been for years. Yeah. And, that's, kind of my thing. If at least that's what I want to try to do, as much as possible.
Well, and that pursuit will lead to work for sure. Your name is the name of some other sports figure I've heard of.
Yeah, it's funny. I have the same name as a famous baseball player and a famous basketball player, which that helps. But yeah, there's yes, I think if you type in drummer Reggie Jackson, that'll at least help get you closer. But yeah, there's that. People can always look me up on Facebook. And I usually, well, I shouldn't say my wife usually posts videos of stuff that she's at. I'm really bad at that kind of stuff just because I don't really think I'm sounding that great. But, as we discussed, I should really reconsider that.
I'm going to edit that part. I'm going to edit that part out, man. I'm going to make you sound like I sound great. I am awesome. Got mad editing skills. Reggie Jackson, he seemed like such a sweet, humble guy, but he sounds like he's really arrogant.
Right.
You are. I'm on the record, man. You are a bad dude, man. You are awesome. So go on there, go on YouTube. I mean, I just got to find this stuff. I'm on the road here, so I'm sitting in my hotel room, so you probably hear housekeeping people making racket at this time of the day. But over the last few days, I'm kind of digging into what's going on online, and my bass player roommate here I was like, man, check this guy out. And he's like, holy crap. He's just flipping out watching this stuff.
Oh, wow. Thank you and thank him. No, I appreciate it.
Well, man, I've taken up a lot of your time, but Reggie, it's so good to hear your voice, man, and just catch up with you. I appreciate it, and man, I hope
anytime.
I hope you enjoy listening to this back or whatever, and I think people are just going to totally dig what you have to say about a lot of this stuff and what you're doing, man.
Well, I hope they do. I mean, hopefully, no. Seriously, I appreciate the opportunity, and man, I love you and appreciate you and Liz, and just wish the best for you and your family. And man, yeah, anything you need from me, dude, all you gotta do is call anytime.
Well, I got your number now, so you better watch out.
No problem.
Man, listen, keep in touch with me, and I'll do the same, and we'll cross paths hopefully sooner than later.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, Reggie, man.
Awesome. Oh, anytime, Matt. Be safe on the road.
Okay. I'll talk to you soon, man.
Okay. Bye.
So there you go. It might be obvious to those of you listening that Reggie and I have known each other for a really long time. I had a chance to get to know Reggie back when I lived in Columbus and worked at Columbus Pro Percussion. It's an honor to call Reggie my friend. It was great to get to know him as a person and, of course, as a drummer. I hope you go to YouTube and check out this guy. He's awesome. Such a great player. And I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I want to thank Mike Jackson for his technical help, and stay tuned for Zach Albetta's interview coming up next week. I want to remind you that we're part of the Merge Network that includes Nick Ruffini's Drummer's Resource and Daniel Glass's podcast. Both of those podcasts are definitely worth your time. Check those guys out. So once again, thanks everyone for your support. We appreciate you listening and just keeping in touch, and I hope to see you around. Bye-bye.